Segment 2, Gold and Black Live, and really privileged to have a legendary figure in sports broadcasting. And if you're an Indiana basketball and football fan, sports fan, you know of this guy, Don Fischer. And Don joins the show. He will have, I guess it's a privilege to be in Mackey Arena, but what will be another monumental game between Purdue and Indiana. Don, first, welcome to the show, but also it is a special experience when Purdue and Indiana get together in basketball.
Always has been, always will be, no question about that. It's been a long, storied rivalry. I don't think it's been as good as it was back in the Gene Cady era when Bob Knight and Gene Cady were going at it. It was phenomenal for those 20-plus years, but it's still a great rivalry. There's no question about that. And, of course, Matt Painter's done a phenomenal job at Purdue building that program and making it one of the best in the country. And, obviously, Indiana isn't in that same realm right now.
You know, you come to Mackey Arena, and Indiana's had some, it's never been easy for Indiana at Mackey Arena, as it hasn't been for Purdue in Assembly Hall. But going back over and you've been doing this for, to a Hall of Fame status, but some of the most memorable games in Mackey, and there have been some. I mean, for Indiana, for Purdue fans, they lament the 37-point loss to Cody Zeller and company and Victor Oladipo. But to talk about just some of those classic games, and whether it be Knight Cady, Lee Rose versus Bob Knight, whatever, there's been some amazing games.
There have been. There's no question about that. And Mackey is one of the toughest places to play in the country, not just in the Big Ten. And the crowd there is phenomenal. There's no question about that. The students get into it in such a huge way. And like I said, since Matt has been there, and even in the Cady years, I don't ever remember Mackey being anything but sold out for an Indiana basketball game. So, my memory bank is no longer as good as it once was. It's not even in the ballpark most of the time. I can't go back much farther than a couple of years. And right now, when I think back to 2 years ago, Jalen Hood-Schifino's 35 points was incredible that night. And Indiana obviously won that ball game, and I think won the other game in Bloomington that same year. But that was a phenomenal ball game simply because Hood-Schifino hadn't done anything like that through the season. He was definitely a good scorer, but he had never come close to 35 points. Didn't come close to 30, and he just had an incredible night. And Trace Jackson-Davis, despite the fact that I think he had just 10 points in that game, he was letting Hood-Schifino do his thing. And Trace was a big part of what Indiana was able to do defensively in that ball game. And so, that game was remarkable to me. I was stunned that Indiana won it because Purdue had been so dominant with Zach Edey in the lineup. And Edey, from my perspective, was probably one of the greatest players in the history of Purdue basketball. And I can't go back to all the great players. Obviously, Rick Mount was a storied guy as well. But I thought Zach Edey and his career at Purdue was one of the best players I've ever seen. And the development of that player through his 4 years there was absolutely incredible. The first time we saw him, his freshman season, I thought, this guy is just a plotter. He can't get anything done. He's not going to be that great. The second time we played him that year, he was like twice as good as he was the first time we saw him. And every year after that, he made improvement in his game. And I still think to this day, I've never seen a guy that had improved more than Zach Edey did in those 4 years.
Yeah, no question. All right, Indiana right now is going through a challenging patch. There's talent, that, and Mike Woodson would like nothing better to come up to and do what Indiana did 2 years ago and beat Purdue. When you look at that, in terms of where this team is, I mean, they've shown some ability to be able to play at an elite level. They have the ability to I think, good enough to be damaging in the NCAA tournament. Where are they now? And maybe some of the challenges also of playing at home. Is it a good thing for Indiana to actually be on the road just because of some of the challenges, some of the student fan unrest at home? I mean, how do you view that?
Well, I can tell you, this team has won a couple of games on the road this
Yeah.
year, but they haven't beaten anybody of significance
Yeah.
as far as I'm concerned. They have not handled big games well. Obviously, they go to the Bahamas. Louisville, who everybody thought was going to be a victim in that game of Indiana, absolutely clobbered IU. This team has been so inconsistent with its play. Start of ball games, second half of ball games, depending on what the situation was. We have not seen this team play consistently well throughout the year, and they have the talent to be one of the best teams in the league, in my opinion. They just haven't shown it. And unfortunately, right now, they're in a real world of hurt because they're about to take on Purdue, Wisconsin, Michigan State. I think UCLA's in that mix. They've got Purdue again after that. This team is going to play its hardest package of games so far this year in the next 6 or 7 ball games, and they are going to have to play their best basketball to win any of them.
Yeah, and yet the talent is there in terms of what do you make of some of the you've been around. What you just put up the graphic 2,000 games plus things. Fans get a certain way. You got to deal with that in terms of where Mike Woodson is now and where this team is now. Is this a situation that can go on for a long time? How do you view Mike's status down the road and looking ahead to what this team can still accomplish this year?
Well, if they get it going here, if they pull off a couple of surprises, that kind of thing, and get the mojo back and do it for 40 minutes, which that's been one of the biggest problems. They have good halves and bad halves in the same night. And those kinds of inconsistencies are a big problem with this basketball team right now. I do think Umar Baldo has been tremendous. I think he's been the best player on this basketball team throughout this season from a consistency standpoint. He's got 7 or 8 double-doubles now on the season. I'm impressed with what he's been able to do, but the package around him has not produced on a consistent basis. And they've got enough veteran players on this ball club, guys who have been around a long time. Luke Goody's established himself here at, since he's been on the roster as a leader on this team, which is incredible when you think you've got Galloway and Leal and some of these other older players that are a part of that. But it just hasn't coalesced. The chemistry hasn't been there on a consistent basis at this point. And unless that happens, this team's in real trouble for the rest of the season. And it's above my pay grade to start speculating on coaching changes and things like that. So I'm not going to go there. But all I know is right now it's not happening.
Galloway and Leo, this is the ultimate, and Goody certainly too, Indiana guys. And this is a special game, and maybe a little extra special. Of course, Galloway's had some great moments in the game 2 years ago, especially. He actually got it heated up in the game that Purdue won handily in Bloomington last year. He got going in the second half. But what that extra thing is that means that extra bit for this game, that's part of that storyline that we're going to see on Friday night.
I would think so. I mean, here's the thing: Galloway and Leal. And Luke Goody, they've all played Purdue. They've all played them in Mackey Arena. So they're veterans of that atmosphere, those kinds of things. There's no doubt in my mind that Indiana is capable. They have the potential to be a team that could pull off an upset. And Purdue this year is not what they've been without Zach Edey, but they're still ranked 10th in the country, and they're having a great season. The shocking loss was Minnesota. So I guess you can take that and put it in the quiver, so to speak, and say there's another possibility there that this Indiana ball club could, if they play their best basketball, pull off an upset. But I think it's going to be difficult, to say the least, to do that with this ball club in the mindset that we've seen over the last several weeks to get it done.
Yeah. All right. When you've done 2,000 games, 3 national championships, how much longer do you want to keep doing this? I mean, and that's said with all the respect in the world, because you are absolutely the best. Even if you're a Purdue fan, if you want to know what's going on, where the ball is, and football and basketball, nobody does it. Rob Blackman's great, and maybe someday he'll be at Don Fischer's level. But we'll talk about that, and just you've been doing it since 1973, but it's still I sense it's still something you love to do.
I wouldn't be doing it if I didn't. And that's the only, if you think about this, Alan, I'm only doing the football and the basketball games themselves and the talk shows with the coaches. So I'm what I would consider semi-retired, so to speak, because once April hits, I'm gone playing golf for the rest of the summer around the state of Indiana, and maybe on some vacation time and that kind of thing. I love what I'm doing. I love doing play-by-play. It's still the only reason I got into this business. And I had to do a lot of other things over those years preceding the fact that I became an independent contractor in, I think, the late 80s. But most of the time, I've always had these other responsibilities. In the last 5 or 6 years, all I've had to do is games themselves. You can't get a better gig than that, Alan. You just can't.
Yeah, and you exemplify. Last question, because we appreciate your time. The wonderful world of college sports and where this is going. I mean, you've been around it for a very long time, and you've seen ebbs and flows, and things have changed. What makes you optimistic? Curt Cignetti put on an unbelievable season that you got to enjoy, and brought transfer portal guys in and won big. IU men's basketball has done some good things there, but it hasn't quite fit exactly right. What makes you optimistic we're going to still be enjoying this as much as we do 10 years from now?
Well, I don't know if I would be enjoying it as much 10 years from now, because I don't know what's going to happen with college athletics. I don't think in the current atmosphere that we're in and the way they're going right now, it's all about the money.
Yeah.
And for players nowadays, it's the same scenario. They're like free agents. They're basically free agents in college sports, which is an awful scenario, in my opinion. It doesn't help the players. It does help them financially, of course, the guys that are getting all that money, but it's lost something.
Yeah.
It's lost that pride in the jersey you're wearing and the loyalty to the school that you're going to. Those kinds of things are gone now. And I just don't see how it survives the way it should in the next 10 years in that regard, unless something is done to realistically put some, I don't know if laws are the right word, or regulations. Regulations, whatever, guardrails on this thing. If they don't do that, I just think college athletics will never be the same.
All right. We well said, and from somebody that knows it and has seen it. Don, thanks so much for your time. I want to thank WLFI also for all that they do to make this happen. Madison Kopp, Chris Collar, State Farm agent Trent Johnson, Triple X on the hill, but on the level of Purdue tradition since 1929. Don, safe travels. I hope if you're a Purdue fan, you hope Purdue's not too hospitable to Indiana, but Purdue will be cutting back down to Bloomington here in a couple of weeks as well. Always at a special time. Thanks again so much for your time, man.
Alan, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.